Dave Aronberg, great to have you back here on Mea Culpa. There is nobody that I need more than you at this very, very moment. Lots to talk about. I want to start right here. How the hell does somebody like Alex Acosta, the former U.S. attorney for Florida, let Jeffrey Epstein walk free in the year 2008 with that secret non-prosecution agreement that shielded dozens of co-conspirators? How in the world does he get a complete pass from the House Oversight Committee's so-called Epstein probe? I can't figure this one out.
Michael, it's good to be with you. It shows that list that James Comer subpoenaed is not a serious list. If it were a serious list, then Alex Acosta would be on it. If they were really interested in fact-finding, he would be on it. Trump would be on it too, quite frankly. But instead, this is a list for political purposes. It's as if Comer threw darts at a list of Donald Trump's enemies. So you've got Hillary Clinton, for whatever reason, Bill Clinton, you've got Bob Mueller, who Trump hates, but he had nothing to do with the non-prosecution decision Alex Acosta did.
You have Jeff Sessions, you have,
Bill Barr.
Bill Barr, which, by the way, I'm glad.
James Comey.
Right.
And you've got this is the greatest hits. This is like
Loretta Lynch. You have Loretta Lynch, and you have what's the last guy's name as well? I forget, but
Eric Holder.
Eric Holder.
This is greatest hits. This is like one of those commercials for a 70s album back then, where it's just like old replayed hits. And you know what this shows, Michael, is that this whole Epstein controversy is ginned up as Pizzagate 2.0. This is a far-right conspiracy theory that there's this cabal of Democratic elites that have a child sex ring running either at a pizza place or on Epstein Island, and Bill Clinton and Bill Gates are at the top of that list. Well, the reality is there is no Epstein list. There is an Epstein file, but there's not an Epstein list. And it's not just a partisan cabal like they're told. They were fed a bill of goods, and now the base is ready to revolt. And to mollify them, you've got James Comer saying, all right, we're going to do subpoenas, and we're going to subpoena Bill and Hillary Clinton. Good luck with that. If you really were interested in finding the truth, you would go and subpoena Alex Acosta, which they didn't.
I mean, I don't even believe that Trump should be subpoenaed. And I'm sure a lot of my listeners will be like, wait. Are we listening to Michael Cohen? Are we listening to Mea Culpa podcast with Dave Aronberg? Fuck out of here. What are you talking about? Who, right? Did something happen to him? Did he bang his head or something? No, I don't believe that they should subpoena Trump. First of all, as president, he wouldn't end up having to show up anyway. But the real answers that we want right now are in the head of Alex Acosta. And everything, not only should we also have Alex Acosta, but what about the victims who actually want to speak out? We know who they are. We know who the victims are. Their names are in the file. Is it so difficult to conceive that our House Oversight Committee, our illustrious members of the House and our members of Congress can figure out where these people are, call them up and say, hi, I'm calling from the office of James Comer, the chair of the House Oversight Committee. You've been pretty vocal about your experiences as it related to the Epstein matter. Would you be willing to testify before Congress? Give them the opportunity, if they want it, to come forward, to tell their story. Instead, by ignoring them, I feel that Comer and the House Oversight Committee are merely victimizing the victims yet again.
Well, if they wanted to actually pursue the truth, they would subpoena people who know things. Now, they could try to subpoena the victims, but a lot of the victims want this thing to be over. This is something that traumatizes them. If they want to subpoena third-party co-conspirators, those individuals will have their Fifth Amendment right. If they want to subpoena Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, that's going to be a fight in court because you got to have a legislative purpose, a legitimate one, and not just a gotcha. And all the people have to do is to fight this out in the courts, like Trump and his people did when the January 6th committee, they subpoenaed them. Remember, Jim Jordan didn't even show up at all. He just ignored the subpoena. So Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and others can just ignore it, fight out in the courts. And then next November, in 2026, the Democrats are expected to gain control of the House, and then the Comer committee is gone.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of expected. But, I never today, especially, I don't take anything for granted. It's why I'm constantly pushing, whether it's here on Mea Culpa, my Substack, or my YouTube lives. It doesn't matter. I keep calling for people to become part of this community, join the conversation. Why? Because the midterm elections is going to be everything. Now, I do want to ask you this. We now know that Alex Acosta personally approved a deal, and this is possibly the greatest fucking deal I've ever heard, that gave Epstein 13 months in this cushy Florida jail. He was also given daily work release, despite the mountains of it. I mean, imagine he's able to leave 6 out of 7 days to go back to the mansion to do work. It's almost like he was using the jail as like a timeshare, despite the mountains of evidence and the dozens and dozens and dozens of victims. Why isn't that prosecutorial misconduct worthy of a subpoena? Or, better than that, disbarment?
Well, the Inspector General at the Department of Justice investigated this, and they found that there were some squirrely things going on, but that there was nothing criminal about it. You do have a lot of discretion. The worst part of that deal, Michael, is what you touched upon, is that it offered immunity to unidentified co-conspirators then and in the future. I've never heard of that before. And they did that without telling the victims. And so the victims were supposed to be notified under federal law, and they sued, and it was in federal court on this issue. But the federal judge essentially said, what's the remedy here? And so they got shafted, the victims, because they were unaware this was going on. And in fact, the consequences of that non-prosecution agreement continue to live on. Do you know that Ghislaine Maxwell's case right now is sitting before the Supreme Court, and her main argument in reversing her conviction is that she gets the benefit of that non-prosecution deal. That immunity flows to her. Now, what happened was the Southern District of New York said, we are not abiding by that deal cut by the Southern District of Florida, so it's game on. Her argument is the feds make a deal, all the feds must obey it. It is not a crazy argument, and it could succeed at the Supreme Court. We'll see.
I've talked about that as well. I have a funny feeling, especially based upon now the president, let's just say, throwing his arms around this matter. I think it's a very legitimate argument that she was making. That non-prosecution agreement should have extended. And she's not wrong. Could you imagine? You make a non-prosecution agreement with a federal judge in one state and another state doesn't have to abide by it. That, to me, just places everybody. You'd never be able to make a deal with anybody.
It's a legitimate argument, Michael, because it does affect all cases. Although here, I guess the best argument for the government is that this agreement in itself is so unusual, where you are saying immunity for unidentified people, that can't be valid. How can it be valid to say anyone else in the future, any involved in this case in any way, unidentified or identified, is given immunity? That is a stretch. And I think that perhaps is the weakness of the Maxwell argument, because the underlying agreement seems to be one that is void. And that's why I'm not sure where the Supreme Court's going to go on it. But yeah, you're right to say that this is a legitimate argument by Maxwell that could eventually set her free.
I'll tell you, I see one thing very different taking place here as it relates to Ghislaine and this whole concept. My concern is that she will get out and that she will never have provided any additional testimony regarding this case, because I believe that she should be on that list as well. Now, I know that they have subpoenaed her, and the claim is that, well, the Supreme Court has not heard this case yet, and that she could be hurting and harming herself. I'm not so sure that the two actually correlate, but that too is a very legitimate argument. As a lawyer, if I was representing Maxwell, I would never allow her to testify while I have a pending appeal going on. It's not just stupid, it's actually legal malpractice. So what they should be doing now is saying to the Supreme Court, hop on it. Give us an answer in 30 days. Give us an answer so that we can actually put her on the stand if, in fact, that she's not, if she's not released.
It's also the same reasoning she has in opposing the release of the grand jury transcripts. Remember, the Trump administration went to court in New York to get those grand jury transcripts released, knowing that they really would, it's not going to be released. It'd fail, and then they can blame the judges and say, aha, you see, not our fault. Blame those judges, liberal activist judges, even though they probably appointed many of these judges, but whatever. And so she is arguing that because her conviction could be overturned at the Supreme Court, that if you release these grand jury documents, it will hurt her chances in the future of getting a fair trial if she needs one. It will hurt her legal proceedings down the road. And she's got an argument. It's another reason why I don't think they're going to release these documents, because her matter is still pending. And you can admit hearsay in grand jury proceedings. So what you're doing is putting out there into the public stuff that's hearsay and that she's not able to cross-examine and fight back against. So that's her argument. But you're right. She should want this whole thing to be decided sooner than later and then speak up. But you know why she doesn't speak up? It's not just that she's worried about the Supreme Court in her case. It's because she has never admitted to doing anything wrong. In fact, in a 2016 deposition, defending herself against a defamation claim from victim Virginia Giuffre, Ghislaine Maxwell actually said under oath that she had never seen Jeffrey Epstein engage in any improper activities with underage girls. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's why she was charged by the Trump administration in 2020 for 2 counts of perjury. And now the same person who the Trump administration back in 2020 deemed a liar, because she is now seen as a reliable source of information that warranted the number 2 person of the DOJ to go down and take personal testimony from her in Tallahassee.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, congressional Republicans, they too want to dig into Epstein's client list. They won't touch the man who actually made the list legally untouchable. Again, talking about Acosta. Is that because Acosta was Trump's labor secretary during the first administration? Or do you think it's because this committee is literally running a cover-up, not an investigation?
The committee does not want to get sideways with the boss, Donald Trump, the leader of the party. So they're only subpoenaing his enemies. They're only going after a list of Trump enemies. Alex Acosta is not a Trump enemy. Alex Acosta was part of Trump's cabinet, and he could do a lot of damage in what he says to the Trump administration because he was the Secretary of Labor there. And also, he could blow holes in this whole Democratic cabal that's out there. See, Ghislaine Maxwell, unlike Acosta, wants to play ball. Ghislaine Maxwell will say whatever the administration wants her to say because she wants a pardon. And look, she got a beneficial placement in a minimum security prison.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to that.
And shortly after she had that interview with Todd Blanche, the number 2 person at the DOJ. So I think the reason why Acosta wasn't subpoenaed was for the reasons I just said. I don't think it's necessarily that anything else beyond that they just want to protect Donald Trump and they want to do his bidding. So they're only going to subpoena people.
Can I jump in here for one quick second? I hate to interrupt, when my guest is speaking here, but I want to be clear about something. And again, knowing Trump as well as I do, and again, people are going to be like, what the fuck? Is Cohen taking a knee? Is he on Trump's payroll? No, I am not for either. I don't believe that Trump was ever even on Epstein's island. Now, I know everybody said, oh my God, but there's all these photos of Trump and Epstein together. Those are all in locations, I believe, here in New York or in Palm Beach. I do know that Trump is in Epstein's black book, meaning his phone book. We know that he was on Epstein's airplane. But if you ask me, why was he even on Epstein's airplane? Because he was getting a free ride to Palm Beach. I mean, it's not like he didn't have his own plane. The only benefit is that Epstein was going to leave when Donald wanted to leave. And on top of that, Trump's not paying for the gas. That's really the truth. Yeah. I'm dead ass serious by you. No, right? Because Trump has been very clear. And I don't care when people say, oh, Donald Trump's an idiot. No, he's not. Oh, Donald Trump has dementia. He just says crazy shit. No, he does not. He knows what he's saying when he says, I have never been on Epstein's island. That was an emphatic statement made more than a handful of times by Trump over a couple of day period. And I believe that he's saying it in order to exonerate. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't know what else was going on, right? So he could be an accomplice to the fact, right? Or he's a witness to the fact and should have probably alerted the authorities that Jeffrey was raping underage girls, children. Maybe.
Well, Michael, I actually agree with you that there is no evidence that Donald Trump engaged in any illegal activity with Jeffrey Epstein. And the fact that he is in the file does not mean he committed any crimes. Now, just to go back to something you said, you're talking about the Epstein list. There is no Epstein list. Epstein didn't create a list of his Johns, but there is an Epstein file. But the MAGA base has been led to believe there is an Epstein list, and they want to see it. But the DOJ has said there is none because there's no evidence that there's ever been a list. But there is a file, and I agree with you. Trump I don't think he did commit any crimes with Epstein, but he's sure acting guilty, right? That's why I don't understand. Right. Why is he acting guilty if he didn't commit any crimes?
Right.
Because there's no evidence that he did.
Now, one of the things that we also know is that Epstein had a lot of photographs and he also had a lot of videotapes. That's something I think that came out in some testimony, and that those tapes are all labeled. I would like to know where they are. I'd like to know who has them. I was under the impression that the FBI has it, but then you start hearing leaks that say that there are none. So is there we'll call it a client list? I'm pretty sure that there's got to be some sort of a list that, he made on people that would come to the island, probably has video on them, because Epstein was exactly what he was. He's a fucking extortionist, child rapist, scumbag. That's just who and what he was.
Well, there could be lists of people who came to the island, and could be lists of, like in this black book, we already know that exists. But as far as a list of those who the girls were trafficked to, the reason why I confidently say there is no list, it's not just because the DOJ said that. And by the way, they had every incentive to publish that if there was a list, because their base is demanding it. They promised the base they would get it, and it doesn't exist. But also the reporters who helped unearth this story said, the ones closest to this said, there is no list. And then you also hear from Alan Dershowitz, Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, who's been talking a lot about this matter and said there is a file, but there is no list. So there's no list that people think, here it is, this master list that's of all the bad guys. But yes, there's a file that contains, it looks like, child porn and names of people who could be unindicted co-conspirators. And do you know something else is interesting? If the grand jury documents are released, do you know that the Trump administration has promised that they would redact the names of the unindicted co-conspirators?
Yeah, so because he's protecting them. All of a sudden, Donald is going to be the protector. Where the fuck was he for me, right? When I was protecting him, why wasn't he protecting me? Now he's going to protect a fucking child rapist? Give me a break. Can we go back to that topic that you brought up about Ghislaine Maxwell being moved? She's serving, based upon a trial, a 20-year sentence for trafficking underage girls to and for Jeffrey Epstein and others. And somehow, despite the unusual nature of it, she somehow managed to land herself in FCI Bryan, which is a satellite camp, like what I was at in Otisville, in Texas, which, by the way, I saw photos of it, much nicer than the Otisville. Had I known that Brian even existed, maybe I would have gone there, but it would have made coming, to visit me by my family impossible. That facility in Texas is actually known for its yoga and its arts and crafts. In this case, certainly more than accountability. And I can't figure out what legal justification could possibly explain that move based on two reasons. Number one, it is almost never that if you have more than 10 years, you cannot be placed in a low security camp. On top of that, if you are charged with a violent or a sex crime offense, you never go into a satellite camp. How?
Well, the original facility she was in Tallahassee was considered a low security camp. This is even lower than that. This is a minimum security camp. And yes, you're not supposed to be sent there if you are a human trafficker. And there are all these protocols that have to be followed through the Bureau of Prisons that apparently were not followed. But I must say this. If the Department of Justice, which oversees the Bureau of Prisons, wants someone sent there, they can send someone there. They can just say, we're going to suspend all the bylaws, we're going to suspend all the rules, and we're going to send them there. So there's nothing illegal, but they did apparently break their protocols in doing that. And the timing, of course, is suspicious because it occurred just after her 2-day interview with Todd Blanche, the number 2 person at the DOJ. So all this is highly suspicious. And it just shows you that she wants to play ball, and she is. She's giving the Trump administration what they want to hear. And there are two things that they want. One, they want exoneration of Donald Trump. They want her to say that he had nothing to do with any of the illegal activities. And number two, they want names of Democrats like Bill Clinton who did participate in illegal activities. So what she wants more than anything else is a pardon. She wants out of prison. And what they've given her already is a better facility. And this is why you can't trust her. It's not only that she is an accused and indicted perjurer, she's a proven liar, but she's also someone who wants something. So she has every incentive to continue to lie.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this makes absolutely zero sense to me. I don't understand, even assuming that she comes out, Ghislaine Maxwell, and makes the statement, an overt statement, that Donald Trump had absolutely nothing to do with the sex trafficking. He was never with any of the underage girls. None of that applies. Yes, he was at parties. He was dancing while in his suit with his long pink or red tie. Absolutely. We have photos of that. There's video of it. I won't say he didn't know Jeffrey. He certainly knew Jeffrey, but he never participated in any illegal act. You think that that's going to sway even Republicans that want to see the release of the file? For the exact reason that you just said. She is a liar. But she's not just a liar. Like, people turn and say, yeah, but Cohen, you're a liar too. You actually pled guilty to 1,001 violation, which was lying to Congress. Yeah, I accepted that. My lie was the number of times I spoke to Trump about a failed real estate project. I said to Congress 3, the real answer was 10, on a deal that never came to fruition. This is about sex trafficking babies, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-old girls, to a bunch of perverts and pedophiles. There's a little bit of a difference here.
I don't think that the release of the Ghislaine Maxwell interview, or the release, which is unlikely to happen, of the grand jury transcripts is going to placate the MAGA base. They were fed all this misinformation about how there is a client list and Bill Clinton's name is on the top of it. So now they're being told there's nothing to see here. Now they're being told there is no client list, but they know there is an Epstein file. And the reason why Trump doesn't want the Epstein file release is because his name is in it, which again goes back to what you and I were saying. Is I do think he has made this problem worse for himself by trying to block the Epstein file.
Yep.
Because people know that he was friends with Epstein. Why try to rewrite history? It's known. And by saying that this letter, this birthday letter, doesn't exist, okay, come on. I mean, it exists. And you know how we know it exists? Because the Attorney General and the FBI have not denied that that letter is in the file. So unless someone else wrote it and signed it for Donald Trump, that letter came from him. And at the very least, it exists with his signature on it. So that's why I think he's making things worse for himself. It's not the crime, it's the cover up.
Yeah.
And I think whatever he does here in trying to placate that base is going to backfire.
I agree with you. You know what bothers me more than anything? The fact is, Maxwell is the only person who's serving time right now for sex trafficking, for this whole sex trafficking ring, that by definition, by legal definition, involves buyers, participants. And what bothers me more than anything is that not a single one of Epstein's powerful clients ever faced any charges. And the question I want to ask you is, why is it always the enablers, like myself, who went to prison for another man's affair? Never the customers, never the involved. Why is it always the enablers who get punished?
Yeah. You know, I can't speak in all the cases, but in this case, there was one other besides Ghislaine Maxwell that was prosecuted for Epstein-related crimes. So you had Epstein, you had Ghislaine Maxwell, and you had this guy, Jean-Luc Brunel. Remember, he was the French modeling agent. He was prosecuted in France, and then he died by suicide in his jail cell in 2022. And then you had Prince Andrew, who was not criminally charged, but he was accused in a civil lawsuit of sexual assault. So you have people being held somewhat accountable. But yes, I understand how unsatisfying it is that you have others who participated in this child sex trafficking who have not been charged. And I do think they would be charged if the prosecutors thought they had enough evidence. But a lot of time has passed, and you have girls who were victimized and who experienced great trauma, and perhaps prosecutors either don't want to put them through the trauma again, perhaps they are reluctant witnesses in some cases, or perhaps their memories at this point have just failed them because their testimony could be unreliable. So for whatever reason, the prosecutors have decided not to pursue charges against anyone else. And do you know how I know they're not going to pursue further charges based on what Ghislaine Maxwell said? It's because they're ready to release the transcript of that interview. No prosecutor worth their salt would release the contents of an incriminating interview where she points a finger at other people, tipping off those people in advance of a prosecution. That means they're not going to engage in any prosecutions. That means the interview with Ghislaine Maxwell is just for the public consumption to try to exonerate Trump and harm other people, but it's not going to lead to any criminal cases.
And I think the easiest way for Trump to exonerate him, if I was still in the inner circle, I would say the best and the easiest way to exonerate yourself is just to release the unredacted file, except for the names of the victims. Short of that, I really do believe that. However, I still am of the opinion that there are some very powerful people, some very well-known names that are on that list, and it's not Trump who's trying to protect them. I think it's the system that's just trying to protect itself.
Well, Trump doesn't want it released because his name's in the file, and he doesn't trust his supporters or anyone else to understand nuance, that just because your name's in the file doesn't mean you are a sex trafficker. And so he wants to be nowhere near this. And as such, the file remains sealed after years of promises from people like Dan Bongino, who's now the number 2 person at the FBI, and Kash Patel, who's the number 1 person at the FBI, that any such file would be released immediately upon their taking over. And now they're saying nothing to see here.
Yep, nothing at all. So I want to just move on and ask you this question, because we're watching some crazy shit take place here in this country. Crazy shit. You got Governor Greg Abbott, Texas, publicly urging the FBI, Kash Patel, to track down and to arrest Democratic members of the Texas House who fled the state to deny the quorum on a redistricting bill that is highly unusual and very suspect. Isn't that an obscure abuse of power, essentially criminalizing peaceful political protest.
I don't see how the FBI has any authority to chase down individuals who traveled legally to another state, unless there's a federal crime. What is the federal crime? The FBI is not empowered to enforce state crimes. They can't. It has to be a federal crime. So Senator John Cornyn sent a message to Kash Patel at the FBI asking for the FBI's help to round these individuals up. And Kash Patel said, yes, we will do so. But will they? Under what authority? Unless there's an allegation of a crime.
Right. But I don't stop that thought, because the part that I'm offended by is that Kash Patel said, sure. It doesn't take a genius to understand that Texas is a state. And if somewhere in the law, a Texas law, you're not allowed to leave the state when there's a gerrymandering bill potentially being put onto the floor, okay, that is a state crime. And as your point is, not a federal crime, meaning the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, has no jurisdiction here. That's the part that I'm offended by the most, is this weaponization of government in order to bully everybody else into compliance.
Well, that's right. And if the state authorities want to chase down these individuals, they can do so within the state. They have no jurisdiction outside the state of Texas, which is why they're asking for the FBI's help.
You ever stand in front of a mirror midsummer, wondering when your face started looking like a used gym towel and your energy vanished? I don't kind of like classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, been there. So let me save you from your next dumb cleanse or your crash diet. This is called Prolon, and it's the only 5-day fasting mimicking program that actually delivers. There's no starving, there's no shady powders, no praying to the kale gods, just real plant-based meals, soups, snacks, teas, all designed to keep you in a fasting state while you're still eating. What it does, it tricks your body into burning fat, repairing cells, and basically turning back the clock without needing a time machine or Botox. And now there's Prolon Next Gen, 100% organic, better taste, and ready to eat. Developed by top scientists at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by legit research. I mean, it literally triggers autophagy, a Nobel Prize winning cellular cleanup process. So yeah, your cells go through a spa day while you sip soup. So look, when I need a reset, and I mean really need one, Prolon's the only thing that works. It's convenient, it's backed by science, and you know what? It doesn't make you hate life. So right now, Mea Culpa listeners, you're going to get 15% off site-wide plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to Prolon's 5-day nutrition program. So go right now to prolonlife.com/Mea Culpa. That's Prolon, PROLONLIFE.com/Mea Culpa to get your discount and your gift. Look good, feel better, and tell your metabolism to wake the hell up.
But the FBI only helps when it's a federal crime, and there are no federal crimes implicated here. And besides, the warrant that was out for these individuals is a civil warrant. It's not even a criminal warrant. There's no allegation they committed a crime. I saw someone trying to put a square peg in a round hole by saying, well, it's an investigation of bribery. Really? Is there any evidence of that? No. You know, you and I are allowed to travel. There's a right to travel in the Constitution. We can go outside the state. If the state says you have to come back, the state has to enforce it. But it's not a crime. It's not a federal crime to travel. And the feds cannot round up these people and bring them back. And if they do, they could be sued for kidnapping and false imprisonment. And if they bring these people back and then in handcuffs walk them into the legislature, how's that going to look? Because the individual can then just turn right back around and leave the state again. So it's not going to end the way that Texas wants them to, even though eventually I'm sure the Republicans will find a way to pass this awful measure into law. They always do. But as far as the FBI, this is not a good look for them, and it's not going to succeed.
So why did Kash Patel then agree that he's going to be a participant? Does that just not validate what so many people like myself have been saying all along, that he's just ill-equipped to be the head of the FBI, that he just is over his skis in this position?
It's that the boss wanted this. Donald Trump wanted it, and he does what the boss wants. And it's going to come back to hurt them. I'm telling you, this is unlawful, and the courts will not tolerate it. And then there could be a showdown with the courts, but there could be civil lawsuits if the FBI agents lay a hand on these individuals who have not been accused of violating any federal law. So this is the type of thing that it may not happen right away, but it's going to blow back in their face down the line.
On what theory? What would be the cause of action that these Texas lawmakers, these Democrats, would be able to sue the FBI or others?
Yeah, it could be false imprisonment, could be kidnapping, could be battery. I mean,
would that be under a Bivens? Would that be under a Bivens claim? Because Bivens no longer exists.
Look, there's a level of sovereign immunity for law enforcement officials, but if they're acting way outside their skis, then the immunity falls apart. So if an FBI
really, Dave, really, yeah, yes, seriously, yeah. Do I need to remind you? Do I need to remind you? I sat at 500 Pearl Street with a guy named Adam Pakula and Enid Phoebus from the Department of Corrections. I was given a fraudulent, a counterfeit federal location monitoring agreement that was written specifically for me, that violated my First Amendment constitutional rights when I asked if we could tamp the language down, because my first book, which was called Disloyal, was already with the printers and I'd be in violation of this paragraph. They handcuffed, shackled me, put me into a freezer for 3 hours, shipped me back up for solitary confinement, and the Supreme Court would not even hear my case, and the appellate court turned around and said, no, Bivens is all but dead.
But by that point, you had already been convicted of a crime and you were on release. And then because you're writing the book, they took you back in. So the same rules don't apply to someone who have not been even accused of a crime. For FBI to go across state lines and grab you when they have no right to, that would be beyond the pale to me.
Okay. All right. If you could see the distinction, you're a better man than me. But let me ask you this question. What kind of precedent do you think that this even sets, where these state lawmakers become fugitives, literally for refusing to participate in a vote that is designed to rig an election? Yeah. I mean, is Abbott setting the stage for legalized authoritarianism in Texas?
This is awful. It's been done before in Texas, and we saw legislators flee before. So this is the type of shenanigans that, unfortunately, it has been done. Now, gerrymandering does go both ways, but I'm not aware of any other state that will redraw their lines in the middle of the decade. It's supposed to be done after every census is drawn. And in Texas, they're doing it purely for political manipulation. And be careful what you ask for, because California is going to respond, and they're going to get those 5 seats back for the Democrats, and then other states, and then it's going to set off a huge cascade of other states moving. And this is not where we should go. Hopefully Congress, and there is seemingly some support for this, can step in and say enough. We're no more redistricting during the middle of a period, during the middle of a decade. Now, Trump, of course, will veto that because it's all about political manipulation, but this is not a good precedent at all. And ultimately, the public will have to speak out on this. But unfortunately, gerrymandering is not something that has traditionally drawn the passions of the voting public.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let me ask you this, because the insanity, the chaos, as I wrote in my Substack the other day, the chaos reigns supreme. Trump is now talking about federalizing Washington, D.C. And he doesn't just mean bringing in National Guard troops. He literally means stripping local control from a majority black city. Is this just a dog whistle, or do you think that it's like a roadmap for martial law?
Well, there's still a big step between federalizing the District of Columbia and imposing martial law. So I don't think that it would be martial law, but it's something that has been discussed in the past by Republicans. They know that DC is an overwhelmingly Democratic city. It has had its crime issues, and they've used that issue as a way to say we should step in and fix things. Already, there's a swarm of nationalized law enforcement there. The local prosecutor is the U.S. attorney, so that's a federal prosecutor. So you see some elements of it, but as far as fully federalized and eliminating local rule, well, that would probably be a bridge too far for most folks, and I think you'd get extreme pushback, including on the courts. I don't know if they can do so easily. They'd have to, I would think, have to do some sort of legislative change that would allow it. I don't think you just do that by executive order. So that would be another issue tied up in the courts for years to come.
Well, somehow or another, Trump seems to be winning on these sort of outlandish type of ideas, and everybody keeps saying, "Oh, the courts will protect us. The courts, the Congress is going to protect us." So far, they have basically walked away of everything.
Congress will not protect us.
No chance.
The courts have on some things, but the Supreme Court has capitulated on some of the bigger ones.
I mean, he's literally talking about putting the DC police under the authority of federal agencies, which to me at least, sounds a lot like creating a personal police force. And that's why I turn around and I say that to me, it almost looks like martial law. My real concern is that something Trump does on a regular basis, use this as a test run to do the same, especially in blue cities and states across America.
Well, that's where the courts will have to step in. I mean, that's it. I mean, if the Supreme Court allows the federal takeover of our local communities and our states, I mean, it would clearly violate the Constitution. You've got the 9th Amendment, the 10th Amendment. You've got others that would be implicated, due process and all these other rules in place to protect our federalism. And also, remember, it's been a Republican tenet of local control. But of course, all those principles go out the window when you have Donald Trump there. Then all of a sudden, local control means nothing. Free trade means nothing. Just leaving people alone means nothing. It's time for big government, a nanny state. And that's what we're getting. So I don't think it'll go that far, Michael. But then again, I am an optimist about these things. And the Supreme Court has not always been our friend.
Yeah. I could see Trump turning around and going, "By the 10th Amendment, it's too far down in the amendment list. We're not going to think about that. States don't have their own rights. If I say that they don't have their own rights, so it has been said, so it shall be done." Right. And then he'll wave his little scepter. I mean, the amount of insanity that's taking place in DC, the amount of grift that's taking place in DC. Did you see just the other day, Cook from Apple came to the office, and in front of the cameras, in front of the American people, he presented Trump with a gift. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Except it appeared to me to be like a 5-pound, 24-karat gold brick stand with a fakakta piece of glass on it that somehow some veteran ended up designing. He designed a circle with a circle with a hole in the dead center that's, I don't know, autographed to Donald Trump about some additional $100 billion investment. I mean, this is, this veteran, my God, he's like an architect engineer, right? He put a stand on there that sits back. It's a 24-karat gold base. And the funny thing is, as he was presenting it to Trump, you could see Lutnick in the back, and he's like, "I want my fucking gold too." I mean, it's really kind of funny. They're doing it, not hiding in the shadows anymore. This shit is right in your face. They're not hiding. They do it in front of the cameras, and they do it with such impunity.
Not Tim Cook's finest moment, for sure.
No, definitely wasn't.
And I love your use of the term fakakta. That's for those who are unfamiliar, that's a Latin phrase in the law that we use for crazy, unhinged, and ridiculous.
Well, it's actually a Yiddish word, but
I,
okay.
I know, but
I need to tell. I mean, I'm certain that many of my Mea Culpa listeners, do not speak Yiddish, right? So let me ask you this, Ted, because it gets even crazier when we talk about, and as I just was a second ago, about Trump floating this idea about federalizing, DC police and so on. Did you hear? And it's something that didn't get much attention at all. The Trump administration literally just lowered the minimum age to become an ICE agent. Get a load of this shit. To become an ICE agent from the age of 21 to 18, claiming that it's about recruitment. Well, does it really look like staffing, or does it really look more like militarization?
Well, the one boom industry that Trump has really promoted within government is ICE agents. In his big, beautiful bill, there's billions of dollars for ICE and new agents. And to recruit all the people that they want to recruit, they're going to lower the age to 18. They don't care about people getting college degrees to be ICE agents. They want any able-bodied individuals, even if they can't even drink legally. They want them there on the front lines of ICE. This is a jobs program to me. This is something that if anything that he wants to grow in government, it's going to be ICE. Even if it compares to the private sector, I think he'd rather have more ICE agents, more jobs in ICE than he would in the private sector, because that is his priority. He thinks of it as a political winner. And I don't think of it any more than that, than a jobs program for his political priority. He thinks the more ICE agents, the better.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. To me, it looks a lot like Nazi Germany when you put youth into military gear, and their goal is to appease the master. That's what it looks like to me. And I'm telling you, I think that the risk of this shit happening, arming teenagers, a fucking 18-year, do you know how reckless I was when I was 18? Are you kidding me? Now you're going to give me an AR-15 and send me into immigrant communities? These kids are all fucking jacked up on hormones. They're turning around. They're living like I did in the gym, benching 305. And all of a sudden, some foreigner turns around and tells you, fuck off, I'm an American, and so on. And they turns around and, these kids are not. They're not solid. They're not sophisticated. This is one of the most dangerous things. There's going to be so much bloodshed as a result. And I don't even like the optics of it. Going after Gen Zers, putting them into ICE outfits with AR-15 flak jackets and sending them into immigrant communities. That is a recipe, my brother, for death.
Oh, man. Well, Michael, as I said, I'm more of the optimist that, as bad as that is, to have this as a growth industry, and I don't see it as Nazi Germany. I think that obviously we're on the road to constitutional crises, but I wouldn't go as far as to say we're Nazi Germany yet.
When you take a look at some of these old clips and so on, they're all young. They basically turn around and said, on your 18th birthday, you're joining the Nazi party. These kids then became indoctrinated into a concept. It is them versus us, right? These kids are spending half their days playing on video games, right? Like, I forget what the name of that one game is. They drop you out of a helicopter and you're
Call of Duty?
No, not Call of Duty, but that's another one. Like Warcraft, something like that.
Minecraft.
Where you drop out of a helicopter and you're shooting at other people who are also live and so on. I'm telling you, this is a recipe for disaster. And I think the optics look exactly like what we saw in World War II. So look, Dave, I know that the hour goes by very, very quickly. I have one last question for you. And I want to go back to Jeffrey Epstein because I just think it's really important. How do you reconcile the fact that Epstein's dead, Maxwell is right now being coddled. Acosta is protected. And all of the survivors are being ignored. If this is America's definition of justice, what hope do we have for real reform?
It is ironic that you had Trump and his team get elected running on the platform of transparency for Jeffrey Epstein's victims and for the public to see what really went on. And now you're seeing Ghislaine Maxwell move to a minimum security facility, and you're seeing the survivors again feel like they're being shut out. The one thing I could say is that if Trump does give Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon, it would have to be on his way out of office because it would be so unpopular. This is the one thing that I think would break MAGA. I think because they have been fed these conspiracy theories that they already want to know why Trump is supposedly protecting Bill Clinton. And I think their heads would explode if they give a pardon to the devil's accomplice. So I think that won't happen, at least not while he's in office. Perhaps on his last days, I could see that happening. If that happens, and that would then, I think, really harm the whole MAGA movement after Trump's gone. Trump doesn't care about that, but I think it would. I do think you're seeing the survivors speak up about this. Virginia Giuffre is not around to speak up for herself anymore because she committed suicide, but her family is, and people are starting to speak up and speak out. And the polls show an overwhelming number of Americans on both sides of the aisle. They want the Epstein files released. So this issue is not going anywhere. It continues to be an albatross around the president's neck. And he's going to have to deal with it one way or the other. And if it means dealing with it with anything short of releasing the Epstein files, it's going to harm him, his poll numbers, and the whole MAGA movement.
Except, they keep talking. The first person that was on the list, of course, was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, thanks to Donald Trump and the Supreme Court of the United States, has the same presidential immunity that Donald has. He is a living president of the United States. He would have the same immunity. So he doesn't have to show up. He doesn't have to do shit. Now, Hillary Clinton's not the same. Comey's not the same. None of the other people on the list. But I'm with you on that. I truly believe that, this is going to be the issue that busts MAGA unless Trump ends up releasing the full unredacted file, again, except for the names of the victims. And I'm flabbergasted, to be honest with you, that after 6 years of listening to MAGA screaming about how this is a Democratic cabal, that all of a sudden the day of reckoning comes about, and then all of a sudden they shy away.
Well, the MAGA base is not shying away from this. As I like to say, the alligator is always hungry. They have fed this alligator. They've tried to appease this alligator, but eventually the alligator is going to bite your face off. And that's what's happened. This is a issue. This is a crisis of their own making. And now they're facing the consequences for it.
Yep. Well, from your mouth to God's ears, Dave, thank you for helping to elucidate this extremely, extremely toxic case. Appreciate you, my friend, and definitely going to need to have you back because, as you just said, this shit ain't stopping and it's not going away.
Thank you, Michael. Great being here.
Good to see you, pal.